Well, good morning. Welcome to the Michael Eure Show. I'm glad to be here today with Earl Ijames, curator from the North Carolina Museum of History. He is also going to be a Black History Month speaker at Wake Tech. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Earl. The audience is going to be excited about today. Go ahead.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for having me at Wake Tech. I'm a curator at the North Carolina Museum of History in downtown Raleigh, across from our historic state capitol. I've been serving as a curator there for the last 10 years, where I curate artifacts related to African American history, Indian history, also Civil War history. The one thing I particularly enjoy is collecting local history and helping people interpret and also create cultural tourism economies from our history and culture by doing things along the research of promoting historic highway markers. But one of the most fun aspects of my job allows me to be a farmer. I'm a farmer in Johnston County, and I also curate agricultural artifacts at the State Museum of History and collect those items. Okay. And so that's one of the pursuits. And so before that 10-year period, 2008, I served 18 years at the State Archives as a reference archivist and photo archivist and general correspondence archivist.
Okay. Now tell us a little bit about the upcoming African American Cultural Celebration, which I know we're on board together.
Yes.
But you have a whole room that you're doing. Now tell us about, there's some agriculture in that too, right?
It is, great. Yeah, thanks, Michael. Yes, our African American Cultural Celebration at the North Carolina Museum of History this is the 17th year of the event, and this year's theme is From Africa to the Americas for 2018, and as we know, 2019 will also commemorate the 400th anniversary of slavery in America. So that theme is somewhat consistent with what we might see next year, but along that line, of course, we have a fantastic lineup that you can see on the website. But I host what's called the History, Film, and Enterprise segment, right, which one of the presenters is Grocers on Wheels, which explores food deserts.
Demetrius Hunter.
Demetrius Hunter, that's right, yes. And so I actually was working with Demetrius just yesterday and finalizing his presentation. And Demetrius comes from a line of two farmers, and they have a farm that dates back to 1868. 150 years, literally acquired after slavery. And so he's going to be talking about that farm, talking about the history of it, talking about what they have been doing, for what they're planning to do in the future for timber and agriculture. And also what Demetrius is going to convey to our audience are farmers, free people of color who were farmers, and he's going to have some terrific examples of that also. So the History, Film, and Enterprise, just one presenter. The film segment, Two Nations, will be exploring another community of color way in eastern North Carolina called Free Union Piney Woods.
Yeah, and I know someone from Piney Woods. I've been there, and there's a lot of Native Americans there, right?
Well, you're exactly right. Historically, that was the northernmost confederacy of the Tuscarora Indians. Oh. And the Tuscarora Indians, of course, were relocated, and I say that with quotes, by the British government during the colonial era after the Tuscarora War in 1713. Wow. And so they were relocated to Ithaca, New York, and Niagara Falls, for your audience, in New York, where after the United States became a nation, the United States recognized them as New York Indians, when they're really the largest Indian tribe in North Carolina. Or in the Carolinas for that matter, and the most powerful Indian tribe in the Carolinas for that matter. But that area, present day, Martin County, Bertie County, northeastern North Carolina, was the northernmost confederacy. And if you drew a line down the coastal plain of North Carolina, basically paralleling Highway 13 to Duplin County, which would have been the southernmost, that area of their confederacy. Of course, dots in between Fort Neruka, which is in Greene County, Snow Hill. In that area.
So we definitely want you to talk about how those two connected. And I'm thinking about, when you talk about Bertie and Hertford, there's the Meherrin Indians up in Winton.
Yes.
And I know that's further north, but they're smaller.
They are smaller tribe of Indians, literally nestled on that, what's now the Meherrin River in northeastern North Carolina. It's Gates County.
Gates, yes.
Yeah, and so they're one of our recognized tribes in North Carolina. And along that line, we also have an American Indian festival at the Museum of History
Exactly.
in November before Thanksgiving, which behind our African American cultural celebration, which draws almost 10,000 people every year. I mean, we like to bill it as not only the kickoff for Black History Month, but it's one of the largest, if not the largest, indoor African American history and heritage events in the South, if not the country.
And we are really very excited about it. And if you have never come, you got to come. It's 3 floors of entertainment, arts, crafts, speakers, workshops, all kinds of stuff for the whole family, and it's free.
Food too.
Yeah, free.
Yes.
And then food too.
Yes. Yes.
They even have cooking demonstrations.
That's right. Yes, that's one of the segments, as you know, Mike, and for our audience. Our celebration is segmented. As I mentioned, I host a history, film, and enterprise, but there's music,
Film,
and
music,
movement, right?
and we have gospel, we have African drummers, we have steppers, we just have all
John
kinds
Canoe.
of, John Canoe,
Yes.
and the drum line from
Yes.
Goldsboro.
That's right,
What
yes.
is the name of that group again? But they turn it out every time.
Oh, I think it's one of the high schools there in Goldsboro.
I don't think it's high school. I think it's a community organization,
Oh, okay.
but it's composed of high school students.
Well, and
It's really good.
And speaking of Goldsboro, one of the favorite projects, well, all of them are my favorite, but as I mentioned, I do Civil War.
Right.
And I serve on our state Civil War committee.
Oh.
And one of the projects that we're working on is out of Goldsboro. It's about the United States colored troops.
Right.
And little people know, and history almost literally wrote out the fact that General Sherman raised a regiment of United States colored troops along Sherman's March, which a lot of people don't realize actually went through North Carolina and ended just west of Durham at Bennett Place. But while at Goldsboro, after capturing Goldsboro, General Sherman raised a regiment, the 135th United States Colored Troops, and their primary objective was to rebuild the railroad hub of Goldsboro, which, if a lot of people don't know, railroad hubs were very precious in the South, and there was Atlanta, which a lot of people know about, but a lot of people don't know about Goldsboro, which was equally significant. And so it was captured by General Sherman in his march, and at that point, the United States Colored Troops, 135th USCT, rebuilt the railroads and literally built a corduroy road from Goldsboro to Raleigh, which had been no continuous route before that time. Mm-hmm. A lot of us drive on that road as Highway 70 today. So they built that, just to finish, they built that road for General Sherman to march into Raleigh and to occupy Raleigh.
Well, tell me about the groups that are coming. You have some reenactors, right, of
Yes.
the colored troops?
That's right.
Yeah.
Of course, the 135th Inc. presentation, part of it will be to raise reenactors for the outfit in Goldsboro, but to support that effort are the 35th United States Colored Troops, headed up by Dr. Malcolm Beach out of Kinston, who is also the president of the United States Colored Troop Living History Association in Washington, D.C. So they're going to be down with United States Colored Troop reenactors, but and so what we're going to do is procession and post the colors
Right.
in their room. But what a lot of people don't know is we have reenactors that are going to fold the colors, who are going to be Sons of American Revolution, which is also one of our presenters, down in Harlow, North Carolina, which is maybe 50, 70 miles
Near
east of
New
New
Bern.
Bern.
I was going to ask you about
In
that.
Carteret County. It's
Yeah.
one of the oldest communities of color in America, founded in the 1600s by free people of color. Well, they raised a predominantly company of patriots of color that fought with George Washington and the patriots during the American Revolution. And so they've since raised a chapter of Sons of American Revolution, which is the country's only predominantly black chapter. There are some members here who are beginning to discover and understand that there were, in fact, enslaved and free people of color who fought in the American Revolution on both sides, really, for the British and for the Patriots.
That's good.
And John Chavis, to that end, is an American patriot who is Raleigh's first teacher and preacher.
And Chavis Heights.
And
is
Chavis
named
Heights
after
is
him.
named for him. That's right.
Right.
So
And he's also related to Ben Chavis.
that's
and
right,
all
and
of
Ben
those
Chavis,
people.
that's right. Yeah, so the
Oxford,
Sons
North
in
Carolina.
Oxford, in Granville County, that's
Yeah.
right. So the Sons of American Revolution reenactors will, along with the United States Colored Troop reenactors, will retire the colors at the end of the program. So it's going to be something to see, and I understand we're going to be live streaming it also with the North Carolina Department of Natural and Cultural Resources.
Okay.
And also you could probably check on the museum website at ncmuseumofhistory.org.
That's wonderful. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to be there to do a part of it, at least get some B-roll for my next show. And I'm gonna come back to the museum, but because you're speaking at Wake Tech, and I know that we talked about agriculture a little bit, tell us about your topic and what your talk will be about.
This is one of my favorite topics. Of course, I mentioned food. I like food. And one of the things that I do on my farm is grow plants that are indigenous to Africa, that were literally placed on slave ships along with our ancestors who were enslaved from Africa. And so one of the things I do to help better explain the transatlantic slave trade and the advance of the slave economy in the New World, and particularly in the South, or in Carolina, as we call it, the Carolina Charter back in 1663, was explaining how slavery developed as part of early fabric, particularly in the Carolina Charter, where there were land grants many times allotted with Africans who were enslaved. And so some of those first Africans were people, if you look in the records of the archives, were called Guinea people. So they were brought over and then clear in the forest. But the next wave of Africans who were brought over were farmers. And that was a systematic way about transatlantic and slavery, because it was the largest, if not the largest business in the world at that time. So you had Lloyd's of London and Aetna and these large firms now that invested back then and maybe even still profiting from it. But the fact is that it was a big business, so people took precautions enslaving other people to maximize their business efforts. So what they would do would literally, after clearing the forest, the next folks tended to be people from the part of Africa around Senegal, where it's very swampy, like it is down in Gates County and down in Washington County.
Elizabeth City,
in that area. Well, along that line, those folks were literally placed in slave ships with rice. And so what I explained to people, a lot of the Africans thought they were going to be eaten, because a lot of these folks, nobody ever had a record of any of those folks returning once they got on those ships in those shackles. And so what we know is that those folks who were brought over many times into Charleston, South Carolina,
I was going to say, because South Carolina is very rice.
That's right.
Oriented.
Well, and the King's Highway, Highway 17, I think it is. That goes from
Virginia?
No, it actually goes to Virginia, but it actually started in Charleston, South Carolina as the King's Highway. And it goes King George III for that, but it goes to Georgetown for King George III. And then it goes on to what's now eastern North Carolina. But Africans who were enslaved were trafficked from Charleston up to places like New Bern, and eventually into Kinston, and eventually into Tarboro. But what we have to substantiate that is one of our state historic sites, Somerset Place. We have noticed by DNA that many of the formerly enslaved people were Senegalese who grew rice there for Josiah Collins on those plantations. And so we explain that advent of foodways and cultures came as a way of slavery. So once that second wave of Africans are brought, the third wave of people who are moving further inland as the forest is cleared, and in the coastal plains, for an example, where we grow sweet potatoes, collard greens, okra, cantaloupe, watermelons are one of my favorite. Things like that, which grow in well-drained, semi-tropical type climates and soils, which were literally transferred from Africa with the people, the food. And so, in explaining that, I also translate that in today's foodways and folkways of our basic diet for the American South. Rice, sweet potatoes, collard greens, okra, things like that. And where they originate, and it allows for people to have a softer palate, so to speak, if there's a way softly to teach about slavery. But at the end of the programs, what I like to do is prepare a dish to kind of bring it home, so to speak. And in this case, we're going to be, well, I'm not in this case, I'm going to do a lecture, but of course, we have an outside caterer who's going to do collard greens East African style. With olive oil, very healthy, and also sweet potato pies. One of my favorites, from sweet potatoes harvested down in eastern North Carolina last year.
And that's going to be February 21st. or
Yes.
28th, 21st. It'll
Yes.
be at the Northern Wake campus of
Yes,
Wake Tech. We're
right
looking
here.
forward. Lunchtime,
Very
12 to 1.
Yes.
So we plan on being there. But you made me think about the waterways.
Yeah.
And, we talk about the Underground Railroad,
Yes.
but there was also that waterway.
Well,
And Harriet Jacobs, I believe.
that's
No,
right.
Go ahead.
Well, Harriet Jacobs out of Edenton
Right.
wrote one of the first abolitionist pamphlets. In fact, many people say incited the Civil War. Her pamphlet, where she wrote about having been enslaved in Edenton and hiding out from an abusive slaveholder in the attic for 7 years.
I know, I found that fascinating.
For 7 years, she
Yes.
hid out in the attic. And so you can read about the story, of course, but Harriet Jacobs, and the book is available at the Museum Gift Shop. But what she eventually did was she was whisked away through the many waterways and swamps and canals and
Yeah.
estuaries in northeastern North Carolina, which was the predominant way our formerly enslaved ancestors sought freedom. And see, this is also point, if I can point out, freedom seekers they were, not refugee slaves,
Okay.
not runaway slaves. Freedom seekers running away from slavery. And so in our vernacular, one of the things I like to do is to convey that, because in many respects we still enslave our formerly enslaved ancestors by calling them slaves, which were property.
Right. And I also want to probably let you know we're going to invite you back again to do a special edition, because we had these technical difficulties. And you have so much information to share. Tell us about some of your sister museums that are going to have exhibits and all of the cultural resources across the state where African Americans.
Yes. Well, of
involved.
course, I mentioned the North Carolina Museum of History, but we're the flagship of the museums around the state. There's Mountain Gateway up in the western part of the state,
Okay.
the Museum of the Albemarle down, and your native northeastern North Carolina.
Just tell us a little bit about the highlights of those particular
Well,
museums.
one of my favorites is down in the museum at the Albemarle. Is they have an old liquor still, which have you as a native of northeastern North Carolina. That's part of the culture and history down there, and so many people are often intrigued about that and want to learn more about it. So, as part of the artifacts for the Museum of History, we share those types of artifacts with our sister museums, as well as help to cultivate.
All right. And he has a question for us. Come
Yes.
on, Doc.
Yes, Mr. Ijames, what are the Black history roots? Are there any historic landmarks in Princeville, North Carolina?
Oh, Princeville is one of my favorite places, yes. Actually, Princeville is America's first town incorporated by our formerly enslaved ancestors in the country. And it's a product of Reconstruction, which was actually almost an accidental product, because it was by no means the largest or even the most prominent community after slavery for people of color. But it's located down on the Tar River across from historic Tarboro, which is an enclave literally established by the British, King George III in 1760. So it goes back as a long-standing black community. Actually, it predates 1760 because that's when it was incorporated, but in 1729, when we became a royal colony, it actually was a landing port for naval stores and inland slavery. So that community is well approaching 300 years in and of itself, that African American community. But Princeville is known mostly for having been flooded out for Hurricane Floyd in 1999, and again this past year with Hurricane Matthew in 20. Actually, it was a year ago, 2 years, in 2016, But one of the things that we've done to help save Princeville is to highlight the fact that it's that historical landmark of being the oldest community incorporated by our formerly enslaved ancestors in the entire country. It was incorporated in February of 1885. It was founded literally as Freedom Hill, as General Terry's Union troops came through and literally read the Emancipation Proclamation on that hill that's right over top, overlooking the Tar River. And so there's a historic landmark, highway marker, as I mentioned. I work on historic highway markers a lot of times. It's called Freedom Hill, and it denotes that spot. And so the historic town, and I'm working with the town and some other folks and helping to revitalize and also help to bring that life and the history as part of its economic future.
And I'm wonderful, and I remember when you highlighted Princeville at one of these programs, and it might have been a Black History program, but I remember they brought the senior citizens and all the folks from Princeville
Yes.
and the museum highlighted that.
Yes,
Yes.
it is. They were featured as, and as a presenter maybe 7 or 8 years ago when Across the River was released as a film about the 1999 flood. But one of the things as part of that research, as we indicated, is that that wasn't the first time Princeville flooded. Many times formerly enslaved people and even free people of color, the only land they could acquire was floodplain. And so, unfortunately, that and many other places where if you looked on the news after Hurricane Matthew, you would have thought that maybe all of eastern North Carolina was predominantly black. But the fact of the matter is those communities historically were located in floodplains
Right.
because that was the only land available to formerly enslaved and free people of color.
And even Zora Neale Hurston talks about it when she talks
Yes.
about the bottom in Florida, Eatonville.
That's right, Eatonville.
So it's normal
Eatonville,
wherever
and,
you go.
and what you'll find a lot of times is a railroad will go through them, just like the railroad at Eatonville in Florida that
Okay.
parallels Highway 4. Well, there's a railroad that goes through there, the Seaboard Railroad.
And you brought up an interesting, the dividers, because the river is a divider
Yeah.
between Tarboro and Princeville.
Well, you ever
And
wonder
Rocky
why-
Mount has a railroad track, of course.
Well, Rocky
Yeah.
Mount was founded as a railroad town, 1849, Atlantic Coastline Railroad. Later, but the railway that extends from Weldon on the Virginia border to Wilmington, when it was completed, it's about 140 miles long, was the longest railroad on earth.
Wow.
And when it was completed.
In North Carolina?
In North Carolina.
Wow.
Yes, in 1840.
And probably had some African Americans helping build the railroad.
Well, of course. In fact, the records are in the state archives.
Wow.
And you can find, for example, the North Carolina Railroad that emanates from Goldsboro across to Charlotte, which is the current corridor for Highway 85. There are records in the state archives where enslaved people were hired out to build those to build those railroads.
What is the cultural resource center in that area? Is it Horton, somebody Horton from there that wrote? It's in that Halifax area?
In Halifax County?
Yes, because Weldon is in,
Weldon's
in
actually,
Northampton.
it's right on the border there. It's right on the Roanoke River on the border of Northampton and Halifax County. And if you look on the map of Eastern North Carolina, I hope you can draw one up, but it draws a straight line down to Wilmington. Well, there's no straight line. There are several, as we pointed out, Tar River, Pamlico River Basin, the Neuse River, which is very swampy, Cape Fear River, the Waccamaw River. All those river basins had to be intersected in order to build that railroad. That's a tremendous feat, both engineering and labor-wise. I mean, and that's without backhoes and power equipment. So formerly enslaved people built those railroad beds 4 feet high. Along that line, if you ever wondered, I wondered if you've seen a railroad bed that's 4 feet high, and if you ever wondered how a steel track got on top of the railroad bed without a crane.
Wow. Well, we're gonna
Yeah.
go quickly, and I think we're gonna go over a little bit if we can.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about Fayetteville and a little bit about Asheville and their history,
Well,
Black history.
let's start with Fayetteville. We have two presenters in the History, Film, and Enterprise segment of this year's African American Culture Celebration. Dr. Ernest Goodson, who's a Stanford-trained orthodontist.
Okay.
And he's also probably most famously known for being married to Judge Patricia Timmons Goodson.
Oh, yeah.
And he's a practicing orthodontist in Fayetteville who will give us a history of dentists, where he has uncovered evidence of formerly enslaved people who were dentists. And this goes along the line of what we teach all the time. Many formerly enslaved, the notion that most enslaved people were cotton pickers, tobacco.
Right.
Farmers is what I call them.
Right.
Because they literally brought farming from Africa
Right.
to here doing that,
Right.
right? So,
And I'm
fine,
glad
yeah.
that you brought that up.
Right. But Dr. Goodson is talking about those enslaved people coming all the way up to here in Oberlin, for an example, which is probably the most prominent community of free people of color settled in Raleigh.
Right.
In the middle of Raleigh. Now, Oberlin was a community, and Method was
Right.
another community where there was the state's first black dentist out of Oberlin. And so he's going to present, I don't want to steal his thunder, but
Right.
about along that line. But also, this is the sesquicentennial
See, you like
of
those words. Go ahead.
Fayetteville State University.
Wow.
Which is one of our state's historical black colleges, universities, North Carolina.
And it's the
Yeah.
second oldest state university in North Carolina,
Well-
only behind UNC.
Well-
it was not founded as a state school.
Well,
of
it
course.
wasn't, but
Right.
as the old Howard School
Right.
by Bishop James Walker Hood,
Wow.
who was one of the first black Republicans, the chairman of the first Black Freedmen's Convention in the South held in Raleigh at St. Paul's AME Church. And
Is that Hood Seminary?
Hood Seminary, he
Yes.
founded Hood Seminary and
Wow.
later became Livingstone College. So he's essentially responsible for both of those. But he is and as I wrap up, the primary architect of what I want to bring other people's attention to. This is the 150th anniversary of our state's 1868 Constitution,
Okay.
which will be on exhibit at the museum starting on Friday,
Okay.
and for Saturday. But our state's 1868 Constitution is the most progressive state constitution in the South today, much less 150 years ago. Among it, what it did is it abolished slavery again, right? Remember the 1865 convention when we remember about it, but we had to re-abolish slavery again in 1868. It guaranteed suffrage to all males, which became political fodder for the conservatives because there were men of color who were formerly enslaved who could vote at a time when white females could not.
Right.
So but the last thing is it guarantees the privileges of education, which sets the basis for uniform school education, which Wake Tech and of course our state's historical black colleges emerged.
Right.
Well, I mentioned we're the country's largest arbiter,
Okay.
country's largest
That's
incubator of historically black colleges, and the first in the South.
right. And we don't want to go into particular schools, but I do want to talk about George Henry White. And he's from that Tarboro area, or
Well-
that's the only courthouse with the African American. Is that right?
Well, not so. George Henry White has do genealogy. He has an interest in genealogy. He's born in a place called Tar Heel, North Carolina, literally Tar Heel,
Wow.
hacking turpentine and lonely pine trees. And he's adopted by the Spalding family, who are free people of color down in Bladen, Columbus County area. And so he's educated. He becomes a Howard University trained lawyer, and eventually rises through the ranks as one of our state's 125 known black Republican legislators between 1865 and 1901. And most famously, he's known as the last black Republican legislator from the South during Reconstruction. But he's born in Tar Heel, grows up in that Bladen, Columbus County area, goes to D.C., comes back home, and runs for office out of New Bern, North Carolina, which was gerrymandered in 1870 as the second congressional district. Literally, the first census after enslaved people were counted free in the census. The conservatives in the legislature gerrymandered a second congressional district, out of which he was elected as the last black Republican representative, a congressman, I should say, which, as I end, culminates. His tenure ended right after, in 1901, after the 1898 coup d'etat in Wilmington, where he could not come back to North Carolina because of the racial violence and literally the setup of Jim Crow and segregation. So President Theodore Roosevelt gave him a job as a postmaster in Washington, D.C. But one of the things he's noted for is during the massacre, the coup d'etat in Wilmington, he was able to successfully locate a large segment of Wilmington's prosperous black population out of Wilmington to the Cape May swamps of New Jersey. And when you go to New Jersey today, there's a historic Whitesboro that's surrounded by five-star villas on the south. So that's a North Carolina history.
And I'm going to hurry up and ask if, in a few minutes, the Cheatham White Scholarship is what made me think about it.
Henry Plummer Cheatham.
Yes.
Henry Plummer Cheatham,
Yes.
interestingly, was the brother-in-law of George Henry White.
Right.
They married the renowned, beautiful daughters of a Tarboro black Republican named Henry Cherry, who was a member of the 1868 Constitutional Convention.
Wow.
But the Henry Plummer Cheatham established the Oxford Colored Orphanage
In Oxford.
in Oxford, North Carolina, Granville
Right.
County, and that's what he's known for. But he was elected to that black congressional second district a term before George Henry White, and they literally flipped a coin to determine who would go first. Okay.
And is there anything final that you want to say?
Well, thank you for this opportunity to come and share with the online audience, and I'm really looking forward to our program during Black History Month. And
Oh, yes.
and really, I look at it as a way of teaching and explaining and helping people better understand our shared history, because it's not only Black History Month, it's all of our history.
Oh, yes.
And I mentioned I do a lot of genealogy, and I find a lot of times with many people who think they're one race are not.
Right.
And I tell people, as a farmer, there are many different stacks of wood in that wood pile.
And I want to say this program is for everybody. It is
Yes.
not just for
It
African
is.
Americans. It's
It is.
for Caucasians.
It
It's
is.
for international. It's for everybody. And everybody's there. And it's a wonderful.
And many of our presenters are people of varying races.
Yes.
And so Black history, African American history
It is.
in
It's
fact,
history. It's American
It's
history.
American history. And so
Yes.
it's free and open to the public, and ask people to come as early as you can. The museum opens at 9 a.m. We can get 10,000 people there.
Oh, yeah.
The weather's going to be beautiful.
Oh, and
We're gonna
we've
be
had
outside.
ice storms before.
We're gonna have NASCAR stock cars
wow.
and stuff. So this is gonna be outdoor vendors. This is gonna be fun. Again, this year, 17th annual
And
African American Cultural Celebration.
Bring
of
your
Museum.
family, bring your friends.
Yes.
And I will be there. And for you online students, if you see me, come see me so we can get you involved with helping us broadcast on Eagle Stream. And we're going to try to bring it live when Earl comes back to Wake Tech on
All right.
February 21st.
Great.
We're sending a survey out right now. Please let us know how you viewed this broadcast so that we can improve future broadcasts. The survey should be popping up in your window right now. If you don't see the survey, there is a link that I just texted in the chat bar. Please consider filling out our survey so that we can improve future broadcasts.
Right. And the next broadcast will be 11 o'clock on Wednesday, February 14th. And then we will do a special with Earl Ijames on February 21st. He speaks at 12, but we're going to get him in here at 11 again. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks again.
All right.